on the way to secure that landing zone, that's when my men ran into a much larger enemy force than we'd ever met before.
Welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler. Pleasure to have you here on this edition of our show. On December the 28th, 2019, an article was submitted to a Columbus, Mississippi area newspaper by Mr. Fred Hall. Mr. Hall wanted to honor a former classmate and decorated war veteran, retired Colonel Minister of the Gospel, Sonny Tucker. And in his remarks, Mr. Hall said, throughout its history, Columbus has produced numerous truly outstanding young men and women who have excelled in fields such as science, medicine, law, sports, government, the military, and more. One of the most unsung heroes in recent history is Henry Butler Sonny Tucker, who graduated from S.D. Lee High School in Columbus in 1955. Today, we welcome the man who Mr. Hall favorably wrote about, retired Army Colonel Sonny Tucker. Sonny, welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint.
Good to be with you, Byron.
You're a frequent listener to this program.
Yes, I enjoy it very much.
Thank you so much.
I watched it this morning.
We appreciate that. Well, as we start off this program today, I would like to do this in honor and memory of your late wife, Miss Loretta. What a beautiful woman. 62 years you were married.
2 years dated, 64 total, right?
Oh, my God. Now, so
my college sweetheart.
You were a student at the University
Southern Mississippi,
where you were a football star. You're in the Hall of Fame, I understand, too, there. Was it love at first sight?
For me, it was love at first sight.
Was she hard to get?
Yeah. She was homecoming queen, Miss University Southern Mississippi. Who's who? She was something, and a beautiful lady, and I miss her so.
I know you do. In your marriage together, God blessed you with a precious daughter, Tori.
Yes, she comes and takes care of Daddy every morning.
Does she really? Is she doing well?
Doing well. She works out at IKEA.
Okay, nice. I want to kind of reflect as you have such a incredible history in the military, retired after 20 years in the U.S. Army, reflecting back on the wartime that you spent in Vietnam. And just, I think we're living in a time that people in America forget sometimes the sacrifices that have been made for the freedoms that you and I share as Americans. Would you agree?
That's correct.
How does it make you feel, Sonny, knowing the time you spent and the sacrifices you made and the men that you left on the battlefield, knowing that?
Well, I think when the time comes, just like today, when the time comes and the task is out there, America rises up. We've got the young men that, right now, we've got young men putting their lives on the line each and every day. Yeah.
Take us back to that morning of the 8th of November, 1965. Do you know where you were at that time?
Yes. We were getting ready. We had been on Operation Hump, H-U-M-P. The reason it was called Operation Hump is because back in those days, you went to Vietnam for 1 year. And we were at the 6-month period because we went there in April, 6 months. We were over the hump, so to speak, and we had 6 more months to go. And so they called it Operation Hump. So we'd been out in the jungle there in War Zone D for, I presume, was about a little over a week. And so my company was designated to go and ensure that the landing zone for the helicopters that were coming in for us would be secure.
Right.
And on the way to secure that landing zone, that's when my men ran into a much larger enemy force than we'd ever met before.
Your outfit, the 173rd Airborne Brigade, was the first unit of American troops to engage the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese in this major battle. The enemy used something referred to as human wave tactics. Were you familiar with this before coming to?
No, that had never been seen. Except, back in the Korean War, they used that. But
can you explain that?
Well, when we're lying on the ground in a prone position, firing at them and everything, and they just get up and they charge, and they charge by bugle, and it's just a human wave tactics, and so that was their mistake. That's when they took a lot of casualties.
Okay, under your command, I believe there was some 130 men. Is that correct?
180.
180 men.
Yes.
Of those 180, 29 died there.
29, and I had about 50 or 60 of those that were wounded.
You said that the Hill 65 was etched in your memory more vividly than your mother's name.
Yes. And when I see some of the footage of the young men that died, and they're all so young, 18 and 19 years old, they'll always be in my mind as a young man.
And you started out with these men, 180 men in Okinawa, I believe.
Trained them in Okinawa for 3 years.
So you knew them pretty well.
Yes, by the back of their head.
After the battle on the 8th of November, you and General Westmoreland, another famous general in the Army, visited your men in the MASH hospital. What was that moment like? I can't imagine.
Well, he waited. He was there when we came in from the helicopters. We landed the helicopters. And then I got in his entourage, and we went over to the MASH hospital, which was there in Benoit, which was not, it was a tent, MASH hospital. And we walked through, and he talked to each and every one there.
Two of the men that were under your command were the first of the Vietnam conflict to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor. You also attended an award ceremony in the Rose Garden at the White House.
Yes, got to meet, went into the office with President Johnson, went outside. The aide told us not to shake his hand too hard, talking about President Johnson. And myself and my Sergeant Major Board, we stood by the president and the vice president and Joel and his wife, and also Joel's mom and daddy. And he was so pleased that he got the Medal of Honor, not for himself, but that his son got automatically appointed to West Point.
Oh.
For all Congressional Medal of Honor winners there.
That was one of the benefits of that?
That's the benefit of a Congressional Medal of Honor. Your children get to go to West Point. You
yourself, Sonny, were decorated war veteran, having been awarded a Silver Star, 3 Bronze Stars, each for bravery and heroics in the face of the enemy, the meritorious Silver Medal, and 4 Vietnamese Cross Gallantry medals. What's it like to be pinned with those kind of medals? What goes through your mind during ceremonies like that?
Well, like I say, I'd give them everyone back if I get those 29 young men back. But I was no hero. My men were the heroes.
Just thinking back in your childhood, was there anything, experience, or the way you were brought up that you reflected on, or that gave you strength when you were on the battlefield?
I've never lived in a house with a man in my life. I was raised with my 2 sisters and my mother, single mother. My grandmother raised me. My grandmama named me. And we were raised in the First Baptist Church in Columbus, Mississippi. When the doors were open, the Tucker clan was there, and NRAs, Sunbeams. I gave my heart to the Lord back under an evangelist there in Columbus, Mississippi, when I was a young man. And I knew when I was on Hill 65, I didn't think I was going to make it. In fact, I knew I wasn't going to make it. And but the Lord. Many people there at First Baptist Church, when I go home, they say they could remember my grandmother on Wednesday night raising her hand to the pastor, Dr. S.R. Woodson, saying, "Pray for Sonny and his men." In fact, I got an email here just a couple of weeks ago saying that they could remember my Momo raising her hand in prayer meeting, saying, "Please pray for Sonny and his men in Vietnam."
Wow, I know that must mean so much, knowing that people were praying for you.
I tell you, of all the close calls, the Lord had me encircled with his angels.
Were you wounded on Hill 65?
No. I had a couple of my RTOs, my radio telephone operators, got wounded right by my side.
The bravery and exploits of your rifle company was recorded in a song, a country music duo, Big and Rich, called the 8th of November. The song was nominated for the 2006 Country Music Awards Song of the Year.
Runner-up. It was a runner-up.
Runner-up, yeah.
Placed second. And then the documentary, I think, got the documentary of the year. You can go to YouTube and look at it now.
So what is it like hearing a song, that's on the radio about your exploits?
Got actual footage.
You got actual footage.
In that song, Big and Rich have some actual footage of the enemy, and the documentary interviews the commander of the Viet Cong.
What is that like watching that back, Sonny? I can't imagine.
I haven't watched it in years, but brings back old memories. Big and Rich raised over $1 million on that song, and they built that. If you go to Fort Benning, Georgia, they've got a huge monument dedicated to that battle, and it's right there at the entrance at Fort Benning. It's got the names of the airborne soldiers that gave their life. A beautiful, beautiful monument.
During the Vietnam War, you completed a search and destroy operation where you took 2 armloads of Russian AK-47s back to your supply sergeant for him to fly to Saigon for a trade with the Desk Warriors. What was the outcome of that trade deal?
He came back in on a big chopper, and he had a 15 kW generator, and so that one generator gave all my troops electricity in their tents. They had lights in their tents. A miracle.
The conditions for you in that environment, of course, I've been to that part of the world. It's humidity is crazy.
Yes.
What are some other things you had to deal with just in the environment, aside from the battle?
Well, you had to deal with the food. But, of course, we had sea rations. But, of course, my next tour in Vietnam, I had a 3-man team, and so I had to eat. I was 25 air minutes away from the nearest American, so I lived with the Vietnamese. I had to get my stomach used to eating out there in the woods. So, I came home, and I could have drank a cherry Coke and used me for a thermometer. I'd lost so much weight.
Do you remember some of the unusual foods you had to digest?
Well, I don't want to talk about that,
okay.
But we had to eat with the village chief once a month.
Okay. I think you said enough right there. You had a relationship with General Colin Powell. As a matter of fact, he wrote about you in his autobiography, My American Journey. In the second book he wrote, It Worked for Me, he tells why he selected you as his deputy commander. But what was it like serving under his command?
Well, Colin and I, Mr. Secretary, he was a major and I was a captain. That's when we first became friends at Fort Benning. And then when he became brigade commander years later, he asked to have me as his deputy, so I became his deputy commander. And I tell people I've had the opportunity to work for 2 amazing men. I worked for Colin Powell, who just took over a room, and his presence in a room. Then in the religious world, I worked for Adrian Rogers. So the Lord has blessed me to work into the number one in the religious world and the number one man in the military.
When you think about leadership values, what are some things that you learned after war? And we'll move into the story of Adrian Rogers in a little bit, but I want to go kind of stay in the military circles right now. But the men that you worked under regarding leadership, what were some leadership values that you were taking away from those that you served under?
Well, the first thing, look after your men, always. And Colin Powell was good about that. Colin knew everybody. I mean, he got down at the nitty gritty, and he was their friend. And in the book, It Worked for Me, he tells why he was a friend, and he needed a man that under him that jacked everybody up. And so that's in that book. He dedicates a whole chapter about me being the executive officer and why you need a man under you, because the leader's got to be a good man.
Yes. And
then somebody under him has got to be the man that takes care of business.
One of your best friends was General Fred K. Mahaffey. What were the circumstances you feel like, Sonny, that helped create that bond between you two?
Well, once again, I was his deputy when he was brigade commander. By the way, when he died of an aneurysm while he was speaking up at the War College. Youngest 4-star general in the Army. Several years ago, I was asked to come and do a memorial service for 15 airborne soldiers at Arlington National Cemetery. And I knew General Mahaffey was. In fact, his daughter and my daughter, Tori, were roommates in college. And I was very close to that family. And I knew he was buried at Arlington. And I wanted to see his grave. And as I was speaking to those 15 airborne soldiers at their memorial service there at Arlington, I just happened to look over on my right, and there he was. He in a big one of the big tombs, and had 4 stars on it, and Fred K. was right there by my side while I was speaking to those guys. I thought I said that's amazing.
That bond itself, what were some things that connected you to, other than the fact that he was your superior?
Well, we lived about 4 doors there at Fort Benning, about 4 doors down from each other. Of course, he lived in general quarters, and I lived in colonel's quarters. In fact, when you watch the movie, we were soldiers once. They run right by my house there, running the troops. But he called us down one night, Loretta and I. He and his wife called us down, and they called us down because he wanted me to meet, of course, his daughter. We knew the other daughter, and they were announcing the engagement. And that night, Potsy, who was one of the guys on Fonzie and
Happy Days.
Happy Days. Everybody's watched Happy Days, but they announced their wedding. So we celebrated their engagement down in their living room that night. I remember that.
The legendary Lieutenant Colonel John Paul Vann was also part of your military career. When you serve under somebody like that, are there times when you doubt or question their leadership?
Well, you wouldn't. John Paul Vann, of course, he was a retired lieutenant colonel, but he was the most powerful civilian in Vietnam. He had 3- and 4-star generals working for him. And of course, he got killed during Tet, but he's the only civilian that commanded a corps. If you look that up, and
the only civilian
ever in history. It's in the book, The Bright and Shining Lie, which won a Pulitzer Prize. But he was the most vile man I've ever known. The most vile man. I can tell you, I had no respect for him. Of course, I obeyed my orders.
Yes.
But the vilest man I've ever known. And he died a cruel death.
It was a chopper crash, wasn't it?
Yeah, he got shot down during. Now, he feared no one. And of course, during that Tet, he got shot down. He flew his own helicopter.
After an honorable and heroic career in the military, Sonny, you received a call from God. Tell me about that call for ministry.
Well, I think he talked to my wife first, but I was at Fort Benning. There was a time that after I left college and everything, it was 17 years that I didn't go to church. What I wanted to do, I wanted to be a general, but the Lord wanted me to be a corporal in His army, and so I hadn't been to church in 17 years, and the Lord spoke to me, and we were looking for a church there in Fort Benning. I saw we went around one Wednesday night looking for a church. I saw a parking lot full. I said, let's go in here. And so we went in there. It was Edgewood Baptist Church, a godly church. Pastor's a dear friend of mine right now. He preached God's word. And then Dr. Gray Allison came to Edgewood Baptist Church to teach on the book of Mark. And the pastor asked me, would I take him to my home and feed him on a Sunday. And so Loretta and I had him over at our house, plus his men, plus the staff. And and at that time, I was thinking about going to Southwestern. But when you got Dr. Gray Allison in your house, I would say of all the people I've ever worked for, the most influential man in my life is Dr. Gray Allison.
Wow.
And his wife just passed away the day before yesterday.
She did.
Von Sill. In fact, Von Sill taught me music in seminary. She taught all the preachers. Because Dr. Allison said, you might be in a country church and your organist or your pianist won't show up, or your song leader, so you need to know how to lead music. So for our final exam, you could lead any song you wanted to. So I decided to lead Away in the Manger. And I did the pickup, and I started to leading Away in the Manger with the preacher boys, and they all started laughing and falling out in the aisle. And I found out that I was leading it to Away in the Manger to the wrong tune. And then Miss Von Sills, I went up and she said, "Oh, Brother Sonny, I'm so glad you did so bad. My husband tells me I give too many A's in this class, and I need a B, and you got it. So I always remember I loved her to death.
That's a great story, Sonny. You mentioned about working under the leadership of Adrian Rogers. How did his leadership ability compare with some of the high-ranking military officers that you served under?
Oh, nothing like Adrian Rogers, man. I mean, he's the best. I mean, he was a natural. Of course, he's full of the Holy Ghost, right? But I just thank the Lord that I had the opportunity to work for him. I always thought he'd do my funeral, but the Lord took him home, and I still miss him. I miss him as a friend. We got it. And, when just like when MacArthur left the Army, we had other generals that take his place. I mean, now Dr. Adrian Rogers left. We've got Steve Gaines just took that place. God's always got a man waiting.
Did Dr. Rogers ever take any advice from you?
No. But he always joked with me. I just loved him to death. I mean, he really had a great sense of humor.
Can you recall something that sticks in your mind about some of his humor, maybe a particular joke or something?
For Christmas, because he loved it so much, my gift every year to him was the desk calendar. They don't make it anymore, Far Side. He loved Far Side. And I always gave him a big desk calendar to sit there on his desk. And one thing I learned from Dr. Rogers, always send that thank you note. Or just a note to someone. Just sit down. You hadn't spoke to somebody in a long time, just sit down and write them a note. I learned that from him.
Your position on staff at Bellevue was minister to senior adults, I believe.
And pastoral ministers.
And pastoral ministers.
They go together, right?
Yes,
pastoral ministers. And Joe Jernigan's got that now, pastoral ministers. By the way, he's had that very successful transplant of that liver. I think he's today.
Kidney transplant. Yep.
Yeah. I think he comes home today, Thursday. Yeah.
I know. We're very thankful. Prayers have been answered.
Oh, yeah, man.
Sonny, I would like to focus the rest of our time together reflecting on your precious bride, as we mentioned at the beginning, 62 years, Loretta Beths Tucker, who went home to be with Jesus on April 24th of last year, 2019. The first time you laid eyes on her was at the University of Southern Mississippi. Is that right?
Yes.
Did she live close to you, or is that the first time you met? Was she from another area?
She was in Biloxi. I was in the northern part of the state. I had just got there. I was at LSU on a football scholarship. I didn't like LSU, and I got an appointment to West Point, so I dropped out of LSU and went up and prepped for West Point, and I didn't like the Army. And so I left and went down to play football for Southern Mississippi. And Loretta was captain of the Dixie Darlings. And I saw that young lady out there leading the Dixie Darlings when I was down there. So I got, beautiful lady. What I remember about Miss Loretta was how graceful she was. Yes.
She was the classic lady.
Yes. In fact, on brag, she was. When we were in Georgia in 1966, 67, and 68, somewhere along in there, she got one of the top 10 women in Georgia. And she was in Who's Who. She was Hall of Famer at Southern Mississippi. She homecoming queen. She was Miss Southern Mississippi. I mean, she had it all. And we dated for 2 years, and we went off and got married secretly because I was afraid they'd just kick me off my football scholarship being married. And the coach went out and got me a job at the radio station, WHSY.
Hey, I was going to ask you, I understand that you've had a background in broadcasting.
Yes, WHSY, 1230 on your radio.
I love it. So tell me about that experience. Were you actually doing, on-air disc jockey?
Yeah, that's what it was, ABC.
What time were you on?
In fact, excuse me. In fact, Paul Harvey did a radio program from our station, Yeah, Hattiesburg, Mississippi. That's been a lot of years ago. That's been 1958, 59 in there. A lot of years, man.
So were you playing music?
Yeah, top 10, top 20.
Can you remember any of the songs?
I used to do a sock house. Yeah.
Sonny, as we say goodbye on this program, what does it mean for you to have served our country? And more importantly, what does it mean for you to be a follower of Jesus Christ?
What I do every morning, I get up. Of course, since Steve Gaines has come, this is, I guess, the 15th or 16th time I've read the Bible through cover to cover. So I have, first thing I do when I hit the floor every morning, I do my Bible reading, and then I do focus. I do a lot of different devotions, but I do one focus on life is read the Psalms through every month, and Proverbs every month. And right behind on our kitchen table, right on the wall there, I've got a big sign. I ordered it from Amazon a few years ago because I watched the Dust Bowl, a documentary on the Dust Bowl, and I saw this mama. Everybody was dressed in potato sacks, dirty face and everything, and she got and put a little food on the table for breakfast, But they had a homemade sign on the back that says, "We are blessed." And I said, wow, here's this little family just barely making it and saying that we are blessed, and here I am. So I went and got me a big sign because I have been blessed in my life. So at my house, behind my table, and there's a sign that says, "We are blessed." And I thank God. I thank God for a godly mother. Thank God for, I learned more from my grandmother. Had a 10th grade education. She probably didn't have a 10th grade education, but she knew more about the Bible. I've got her Bible now in my study. It's over 100 years old. The Bible's falling apart. I've got it all wrapped up. But if your Bible's falling apart, you're not falling apart, right? And so I can't wait in the morning. Because I'm in the habit of reading the Bible cover to cover. And I'm thankful that Pastor Gaines has got us reading the Bible cover to cover.
Do you have a particular verse that you lean on, one that's carried you through the years you like?
I like 2 Samuel 2:8, where it says, he takes you off of the dunghill, takes you out of the manure pile, that some Bibles say, takes you out of the manure pile and sets you to sit with princes. And it's my life, man. He took me out of the manure pile and has put me down where princes are. I mean, it had nothing to do with it, just by what? By the grace of God. Grace of God is like what? The ocean wave, just every day, just one wave after the other. I didn't think the worst, just there in April when I gave my wife up, I didn't think I was going to make it. Just being there, they ran every test on her. She went there to get her heart valve replaced, didn't come home. And it was unbelievable. And and just by the grace of God, reading God's Word strengthened me, and the one wave after another of grace, just His grace, He'll get you through. And I'm so proud of that.